Okay, I am Cheryl and I teach computer classes at the main library. And now I teach most of the online Zoom computer classes. Today's class is going to be creating an introduction to creating basic fillable forms in Microsoft Word to let you do anything that you need somebody else to fill out. To fill in the blanks, etc., or anything like an invoice that you need them to put in the amount or the number, and it will calculate the total, that kind of thing. Okay. All right. So you should have gotten a handout. I sent them out last night. Intro to fillable forms in Microsoft Word. If you did not, check your spam folder, your junk folder, and see if it got put in there. Okay. If not, let me know, and I will email you another copy of the handouts. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Now, if you have a question, while I'm working and looking at the screen and sharing my screen, I frequently don't notice that if you put a question in the chats, I may not notice that there's a notification at the bottom. So what I suggest is if you ask a question in the chat and I don't respond to you, I probably just didn't see it. So unmute yourself, ask the question verbally, and then remute yourself. If you don't know how to unmute yourself, in your bottom left-hand corner, I believe this is the direction properly for you. There is a little button that looks like a microphone. You click on it, and that's to mute and unmute your microphone. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Okay. And this is a Word document I've just mocked up that's going to be an invoice. And this part here is, I sent you a practice document and I sent you a copy of this, which may be a little different. If you need this copy, I will be happy to send it to you. Okay. All right, so this is a basic form that I'm going to use for ordering cookies. I want the customers to be able to click in a box here and put in how many, and I want it to automatically add up the total. And then I want it to do subtotals here. Then I want to put a box here where it says special handling instructions if they have a particular thing they want. So I want a box there where they can just click in it and type their instructions. And I'm going to offer them a free gift with purchase, and I'm going to ask them to choose which colors they like. And so I want little check mark boxes beside each of these, and I want to let them check mark how many, what colors they like, so that they'll have an option, and I'll give them one of those colors for their free gift, whatever I'm offering for the free gift, that is. Okay. Now, in order to create fillable forms in Word, you need the Developer tab. This is not automatically turned on when you get Word. To turn this on, what you'll need to do, this part up here, by the way, is called the ribbon. You will right-click on the ribbon somewhere and choose Customize the Ribbon. Over here on this side, you will make sure you will check mark it. This will be off to start with. You will click that to check mark it beside Developer. And when you click OK, the Developer tab will appear. And that's where you do your forms. Now, your forms are created using this section here called Controls. The little boxes and check marks and things that they can type into or insert things in, those are called, what you create those with are called the controls. You have two different types of controls. You have content controls, which are these first rows here, these little icons here. Then you have something called legacy controls, which are under this little thing, which I believe is supposed to be a toolbox. I think it's got a little wrench there. It's got a little triangle next to it. If you click that triangle, you'll drop down the legacy controls. Now they're called legacy controls because these are the controls that were originally used in the older versions of Word. They have since been replaced with the content controls up here. And for the most part, these content controls work easier and faster, and there's more kinds of them. There's more types of these up here. And these down here, if you use these, they require a separate step called restricting or protecting in order to activate. These up here become active immediately. The only problem is when it comes to math. If you need it to do math, like down here, you must use the legacy forms here to do the math. If you want to do it up here, you will have to do something called creating a macro, which is a little program to do the math for you. This is a little beyond my capability. So even though these are much faster to use, I still use these if I want to do math. Now, if you do want to do math anywhere on your document, all of your forms, even the parts down here where you're not doing math, all of those have to be created with these legacy forms controls. If you're not doing math anywhere on the page, you can use these content controls up here. Because apparently Word doesn't like it when you mix and match the different types of controls in one document. So there we go. So if you want to do math anywhere on the document, you have to do all of your form with this. Okay. All righty. So we have, I'm going to go through these and I'm going to show you what they do. I'm going to start with the content controls up at the top. Okay, so let's say I want to put a text box here. Up here, these first two are the text box content controls. One says rich text, the other says plain text. The difference between these two is that the rich text will let them format each individual word that they type in. The plain text will let them format the whole box, but not each individual word. And I'm going to show you that here. So if I put the cursor where I want the box to appear, and I click the button. It's that simple. Now, with these up here, the content controls, they become active immediately, so I can go ahead and use them. But if I want to change something about them, once I've got something created, I can click up here where it says properties, and I can give this box a title. I can tag it. I can show it, see how it's shown. Is it shown by a box or just by a start and end tag? I can change the color of this highlighter to blue. When it comes in, and I can make it so that they can't delete it or that they can't be edited after it's created, which I don't mind if people go back and edit. So I never bother really with the properties for the text boxes. How this works is now it says click or tap to enter text. They can click in it. Whoops. Oh, and I messed it up with the properties playing around with it. So let's just put it back in. Okay. So I can click in there and I can type, please leave on the front porch. Now, because I created it using the rich text one, I can select each one of these words and I can highlight them, or I can do a different font. Okay. So if I'm going to show you the difference between this and the plain text. So if I click plain text and enter it there, now if I do the exact same thing, please leave on the front porch. But now I try with please, and then I try to highlight this one. It highlights all of it. You can't just change one word or whatever. Now, which one you use is strictly a matter of personal preference. If there's a reason why they need to format each individual word separately, then use rich text. Otherwise, just use plain text. That's perfectly fine. This next one here is the picture content control. If you click that, it puts a box where they can click on there and do an insert picture. And they can insert a picture into that box. You would use this for, say, things like, let's say they're requesting reimbursement for a damaged package or something of that nature. And you want them to show you a picture of the damage. You can put a box here with instructions that say, please click in the box and insert a picture of the damaged package before we can reimburse you. Okay. Next, let's go ahead and add a little more space so we can play more. This one here, the next one over, is called the building block gallery content control. Now in Word, a building block is a pre-made thing. It could be a pre-made address block, or a pre-made, you may have made a block that has your company logo with the name underneath of it. And they save that in building blocks. Usually these are done pre-made by your IT department or your company or whatever. And they will show you, they will tell you what there is there. But there are things that can be reused over and over again without recreating it each time. I don't usually use those, so I don't put those in forms. This one is a checkbox content control. That's, let's say I wanted a check mark beside each one of these. That's where I want it to appear. I'm going to click where I want the box to appear. And I like to have a little extra space in between the box and the words. So I actually like to put spaces in there before there, and then I'll click and put the check mark in there. Otherwise, the words will be right up against the check mark box. So I just click there, and I do that for each one. Click, click. Whoops, sorry. Now they will say check mark each one that they want, as many as they want. Now, if you want to make check marks that are mutually exclusive, which means they can only pick one, that's a little more problematic. To do that, you have to do what we call grouping these. and it's a little more a little more intermediate steps. If you need something where they can only choose one, I would the easiest way to do that is just a drop down list. Okay. So in which case that one is the third one over on the second row. Drop down list. Going to put a drop down list. Now, when it comes to the drop down list, you really do have to go up to properties. Because properties is where you put in the items on the list. Down here, I've created the drop down list, and right down here, I'm going to create things. Let's say, so I want red. I'm going to add one and red. And if it has a number associated with this, I will give this a value right here. But this is not a number associated with it. It's just the color. So I'm going to click OK. So I've got red. I'm going to add another one, yellow. Okay. Add, whoops. And I've mistyped yellow. So I want to click on that and choose modify. So I can go back and edit it. And I say green and blue. Now, if I want to remove one of those, well, say we run out of blue, you can click on blue and click remove, and it will remove it. I can rearrange the order these are in by clicking on one and choosing to move it up or down the list. And I'm going to click OK. So now if I click there and I choose, I now have a drop down list where I can only choose one. That's easier to do than trying to group these together and make them mutually exclusive. Now, in between, you'll notice I skipped one. The check mark is the checkbox, and then the third one is the drop down. The one in between those two is a combo content control. And if I go over to properties, I can add things here. But the combo is used if, let's say, one of the items that you want to add is not just words, but one of the items is actually a text box where they can enter, they can type their own option on the list. Frankly, the way I've always done it is I've just put a drop-down list with one of the options to be other, and then I'll put a box right below it that says, if you chose other, what is it? And I'll put a box they can type into. But it is possible to do it with the content or with the combo box content control to combine other options in here. Okay. The last one there is, let me get somewhere in here. Okay, this last one here that we're going to talk about, right, is a date picker. And this one's super easy. You just click on it and it enters another box that looks like a drop down box, but when you choose it, when you drop it down, it's that date selection box that we all know and love. It's super easy. I love that button. All right. I've never used this last one, the repeating section content control. That's to create a control that contains, contains other controls and repeats it. That's if you have to use information from one content control box over and over again. That can repeat. That's what that's used for. So it's not an actual control itself. It takes things from the other ones and repeats it. Okay. So most of these are very simple to add in. Now, if you're going to send this, if you're going to create this and send it to somebody, you're going to send this Word document to them, but you don't want them to be able to edit everything. You don't want them to be able to delete this part here, or you don't want them to be able to delete your logo and put their own and reuse your form. So we have something called restricted editing, where we can restrict what they can change and what they can't. And that's over here. The controls will work automatically, but if you're going to send this to somebody, you want to restrict what they can change. And right here on the second thing, you can under formatting, you can limit what formatting styles that they're allowed to use in, say, in their rich text content controls, where I told you they could choose styles, different formats. But here, this is where you want to make sure that's check marked to only allow this type of editing. And you want to make sure that says filling in forms. That will let them fill in any of the boxes, but will not let them change anything else. Then you have to click start. Yes, start enforcing protection. Now it's going to ask you for a password. Now you do not have to put a password on here. But if you do not put a password on here, anybody you send this to who knows how to use the developer tab can go in here to the restrict editing and remove that restriction. Whereas if you put a password on it, they can try to remove the restriction, but they don't know the password, so they can't change it. So whether you do this or not is strictly up to you. So I'm just going to put in test. And I'm going to click OK. So now I can still change this stuff in the box here. See that? But if I try to edit this part up here, I'm trying to click on the word cookies. I'm trying to select cookies. It's not letting me select it. I cannot edit any of this stuff. It's not physically letting me. It's not even letting my cursor go up there. To take this off, I go back to the restrict editing. And by the way, if you click this once, it comes up. If you click it again, it goes away. Come back to the restrict editing and I click stop protection. And now it's going to ask me for the password. If I had not put in a password, if I had just left those blank, it would have just stopped the protection without asking anything. But I put a password in, so now it's asking me for it. And now I can go over here and I can edit that. And I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of that here. Okay. So you see those basic form content controls to create your form fields. Those are fairly simple if you know which ones you need to do. So I would recommend creating everything first and then going in and putting in your fields. Okay. Now I want to show you how to do math. And remember what I said, they don't play nicely with each other. So I have to remove all of these that I just created to get rid of all of those content controls. Otherwise, it would freak out when I did the legacy forms with the math. Now you can do most of these, those same things down here also. This first one here is a text form field. Doesn't look quite the same, but it lets you click in there, and you can edit it. Now, the one thing I wanted you to know is that when you create a field using one of these, it does not become immediately active. So if I click here and I try and click in that box and type something, the box just erases. In order for any of these here to become active, I actually have to restrict the editing first. And I'm not going to put in a password this time. Okay, so now if I go in here, I can type something in there, and you see by the gray color that I am still in the box. The box is still there. I did not erase it. Okay, I'm gonna stop the protection. And it didn't ask me for a password because I didn't put it in that time. Okay. So you can't test these. If you want to do it and then test it, you have to put it in, then restrict the editing, and then you can test the field. Okay. Now the second one here is a checkbox, just like before. That's the same. The next one is a drop-down list, which doesn't have the little drop-down list triangle right now, but if you click properties, here is where you add something to your drop-down list, and then you click add. Now the other one, you clicked add first and then typed it. This one, you type it first and then click add. Okay. And here's where you move them up and down. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. Now remember, I can't use it until I restrict the editing first. Now, when I click on it, you will see the little triangle and I will see the list here. Okay. So I'm going to go back and stop protection. So with the legacy stuff, it's a little bit more, a few more steps. If you want to put something in and test it, you have to go back and forth. Okay. They had the next button is insert frame, which is lets them put things in, like this is like the picture control up here. This is to toggle the shading off and on. If it's normally they're gray to show that this is a field, a box. If I wanted to not show the gray, I just click that. Okay. And this eraser is to reset it back to before I clicked it and chose green. Okay. So you see they work fairly similarly. It doesn't have a combo box or a date picker. So those are different. Now, you have Activex Controls. These are a little more involved and intricate. Activex Control, like checkmark boxes, you can actually group them together so that they are mutually exclusive. But it's a little more complicated and a little more irritating, frankly, in my opinion. And I really don't know it well enough to go into it. I've played with them before, but I don't find them easy enough to use to teach in a simple class. So, but these are your basic ones here. Okay, so now we're gonna do math. All right. So in my little box here, I want them to click right here in this cell and put how many they want. So I need a field in there. So because I'm going to do math, I'm going to choose the legacy. And you may think it's weird, but to put a number in or to do math, you actually have to put in a text form field. And I'm going to get rid of this here over here. A text form field. Oh, by the way, I think I took out the shading. Okay. So I put in a text form field, but it's not just text. Now what I have to do is I have to go up to properties. When you're doing math, you're going to be working this properties icon a lot. Okay. Now over here where it says text form field type, right now it's just regular text, but there's other things I can put it in here. I want them to be, here's where you can put a date. Instead of the date picker, you can put a date here. It still is not the nice pretty picker, but it's a field that shows a date. You know, it'll put the date format. I want them to just be able to put a number here, and I'm going to put I'm just going to click number. Over here, if I want a number to be automatically entered, so if it's you must choose at least one, I would click there and put the number 1, saying that they must choose one at least, or they can change it to something larger. Here, what kind of format do I want it? This is just a plain number. So I'm just going to do 0 because it's just a plain number. Here's where I'm going to give it under bookmark. I'm going to give it a name. Now, since this is my peanut butter, you may think, oh, I'll just call it peanut butter. You want to keep these bookmark names as short as possible because you're going to have to retype them to do the math. And you want to keep it short and succinct as much as you can. So I'm just going to call this PB. And I'm going to click calculate on exit. What that does is it means whenever I enter something in that box and I hit enter, anything that uses that number in its calculation, like the subtotals, will automatically be updated. That's not a calculation in this box, but this will be used in another box's calculation. And so I want to check mark that. So I'm going to click OK. So it's now created the box. Remember, it's not active yet because I haven't restricted it. Okay, so over here in the total, I'm going to have, I want it to put however much amount they entered here times 350. And I'm going to put that over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the legacy tools, insert another text form field, go back to properties, and this one is not going to be a regular text. This one I want to be I want to choose calculation, which means I'm going to do math in this box. Over here under expression, equal sign, it puts it in automatically. That means it's going to do something. And this works very similarly to Excel. If you've ever done a calculation in Excel, it starts with the equal sign just like that. Now I'm going to put in what I want to calculate. Now I'm going to move this. So I want PB, that's what I called this one, times, which is the little asterisk, 350, or I can do 3.5. Under the format, what do I want over here? I want this to end up in dollars. So I don't put the $ up here in the calculation. I put it down here in the format. I choose the one that shows $. And this one here that says calculate on exit, I leave that alone. Strangely enough, if you're doing a calculation, you do not click calculate. You only click calculate on the things that you are going to put into a calculation, not on the calculation themselves, which is a little not quite intuitive, you know. And so I'm going to give this a name too under bookmark. I'm going to call this PB sub for peanut butter subtotal. And I'm going to click OK. I'm going to do the exact same thing for chocolate chip. So I click here, insert a text, go to properties, make it a number. Under format, I'm going to just choose 0. Under name, I'm going to call this CC for chocolate chip. And I'm going to click calculate on exit because this is going to be used in a calculation. Okay. Now I'm going to click over here, insert a text form field, go to properties. I'm going to make this one a calculation. And how much are the chocolate chips? 375. So I'm going to do CC times 3.75. Under format, I'm going to make that a $. And I'm going to call this CC sub for chocolate chip subtotal. And I'm going to leave this one alone because this is a calculation. Now, I want to test these. So I'm going to click, remember I have to click restrict editing to make them appear or to make them take effect. I'm going to click yes, start enforcing. I don't need a password on it right now. Now it should work. So now if I type 3 here and I tab over, oh, look, 1050 is updated. Now if I put 1 here, 375. Well, that's working really nicely. Okay, that's fine. And yes, the math is correct. Okay, so I'm going to go back to restrict editing and I'm going to stop protecting it so that I can go back and keep adding more. So I would add this for each row. I would call this SB right here. This would be SB sub. This would be SD for snickerdoodle, SD sub, FF, and FF sub. Now let's say I want a subtotal. I'm going to click here where the subtotal is. And I'm going to insert a legacy text form field. I'm going to go up to properties and I'm going to make this a calculation. Now, you would think that all I would have to do would be to PB sub plus CC sub, etc. Unfortunately, that's too logical. And it doesn't work. It looks like it works. And if you try it, you can try and it will pop up a number. But the math will be completely wrong. It has that weird, I don't know if you're used to using Excel. if you've ever used that auto sum button where it adds up things, and then you tried to select two of those or some of those cells and add up those cells, and you get that weird error thing. It doesn't like using the auto sum button on cells that you've used the auto sum button on. It freaks out. This does something very similarly. It does not like to do calculations using cells that are itself calculations. It freaks out and the math goes wonky. You actually have to type everything. So up here, I typed, I have to put in parentheses. So I'm going to do what I did up here to get the 1050, and I'm going to put that in parentheses here. So I did PB times 3.5 in parentheses. Then I'm going to add it to this one. So plus, and in parentheses, I'm going to put the math that I used for this one. CC times 3.75. And I would continue on down for each one of these. This is why I said keep the names short, because otherwise I would have had to type peanut butter, you know, and chocolate chip all over again. So now you tell it what format you want and give this a name, subtotal. And since this is a calculation, I do not calculate on exit. Remember, if this says it, this doesn't. Okay. So now it's added it up. Then if I want tax on that, I have to insert a text form field. Under properties, I'm going to make it a calculation, and I'm going to give it, you know, $. But I'm going to need that whole thing that I did before. Up here, it's easiest to copy and paste. So if I go up here and I click properties, I'm going to copy this and do a Control-C. And then I'm going to go back down here to properties. And in parentheses, I'm going to start a parentheses. I'm going to do a paste. And I'm going to end the parentheses. So basically, I copied everything that was in this box, and I'm putting it inside parentheses. And then I'm going to multiply that by 0.09. So let's say that's 9% sales tax. And I'm going to click OK. Now, the total, I want to add these two up. So I'm going to click this. I'm going to put in a text field. Under properties, I'm going to make this a calculation. I'm going to make it $. And up here, I'm going to go back. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go back here, go up to properties. I'm going to copy this. Everything except the plus sign. Control copy that. Down here, back to this one, I'm going to go to properties. In parentheses, I'm going to put that. So that's the tax. Plus, now I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to come back here, and I got to take this bunch. So I'm going to copy this, Control-C. Go back to properties for this one. And now in parentheses, I'm going to paste that. So see, this is a little annoying, but you don't have to type all of this out yourself. So if you get step by step, you take this, put it in parentheses, plus this in parentheses, and you get the total. So it's a little annoying, but it still works. This is why I recommended you keep the names short, so that it's not, 10,000 lines long by the time you get to this point. Because if you're doing this as a business, you might actually have to add in a shipping line too. So. And of course, because this was a simple addition and these numbers already appeared, they appeared. But if I deleted this, excuse me, it would mess this up. So now I'm going to click Start Enforcing. And I'm finished with, if I'm finished with this, I'll put in a password. If I'm still working on it, I'll just leave the password blank. So that now if I change this one, let's make that a 4. That changes to 15, and these have all updated themselves as well. Okay. All right. That's the basics. Does anybody have any questions before I stop sharing? Okay. Anybody have any questions at all? It's mostly.
Cheryl, can you hear me?
Yes. Do you have a question?
Yes. You said Control C to copy, but how do you paste when you're putting in the
Control V.
Control V.
Yes.
Okay.
I find the keyboard shortcuts very useful when it comes to copying and pasting in situations like that.
Yes.
So what along the bottom row you have X, C, and V, and you can remember that Control X is to cut. So it's like scissors, X cuts it out. C is copy.
Yeah.
And V is paste because it's just the next one in the list. It's just the next one on the row. So they made that one paste for cut, copy, and paste. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You can also, I believe, right click and choose copy and paste, but I'm just so used to doing the keyboard shortcuts for those. I find them extremely useful. Okay.
Yeah, it would be very useful in this setting.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of using the right mouse button to bring up the menu options, just because that's not how I learned. And there, there's 2 or 3 different ways to do so many things on the computers that it's just whatever is the most comfortable for you. I believe you could also select it and then right click and choose copy, and right click and choose paste.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. So if you have any questions that you think of later, you can email me. Like I said, I'll be sending you you all should have registered with your email address when you signed up for the class. So I will be sending you a certificate of completion. At that point, you can let me know if you can respond back to that email and let me know if you want a link to the video recording, and if you have any other further questions. Okay. All right. So thank you guys for coming, and I'm going to stop the video.